When someone talks about compact SUVs, usually the first ones that you think about are the Honda CR-V, Toyota Rav4, or maybe even the Mazda CX-5. But the Chevrolet Equinox is usually not top of mind. And yet, in the United States, by sales figures, this outsells certain compact SUVs like the Hyundai Tucson, or the Mazda CX-5, or even its Detroit rival, the Ford Escape. And yet, it's still not top of mind. Why is that? Let's go for a drive and find out. So up until 2021, the Chevrolet Equinox was available with two engines. There was the base 1.5-liter turbo four-cylinder and an optional 2-liter turbo four-cylinder. It produced about 250 horsepower. Unfortunately for 2022, that 2-liter engine is no longer available, and all that we have is the 1.5. But this engine still produces 170 horsepower and 203 pound-feet of torque. Now on paper, that does seem like quite a lot of power and torque, but in reality, it's not really enough. For a crossover SUV that tips the scales at just under 1,600 kilos, the Equinox doesn't feel particularly peppy. The speedometer increases at a gradual pace, but it doesn't feel like as though it has any sense of urgency when you put your foot down. Furthermore, the engine needs to rev when you're merging onto a highway or going up a steep hill. Don't be surprised if you see the tachometer needle hit 3,500 to 4,000 RPMs. When accelerating from a stoplight on a level road, the RPMs will hit the 3,000 mark on occasion. For some reason that I can't quite put my finger on, this engine feels underpowered for this crossover. But at least with such a small engine, the 2022 Chevrolet Equinox all-wheel drive returns some pretty good fuel economy numbers. It is rated for 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. That is better city fuel economy than all-wheel drive equipped Mazda CX-5 or Hyundai Tucson, but it's about the same highway fuel economy rating. Paired with this engine is a 6-speed automatic transmission, and I thought that Mazda was the last of the more mainstream manufacturers to still use 6-speed automatic, but Chevy is using it. And this transmission is pretty smooth and decently quick on the shifts. However, if you do decide to take over the controls for shifting, you have to do it from the little buttons on the side of the shifter. Not very intuitive. And also the transmission itself is pretty slow to react if you push on one of these buttons. So best to just let the computer do what it wants to do. The Chevy Equinox is an easy crossover SUV to drive. The steering effort is light at slower speeds to help with parking, but it feels stable on highways. Body roll is managed well by the suspension, and the steering responds quickly enough to the driver inputs. Front-wheel drive is standard with all-wheel drive available on all trim levels. But the Equinox does not have the more advanced all-wheel drive system that can be found in the sporty RS trim of the Chevrolet Blazer. The 2022 Chevrolet Equinox has a noticeably firmer ride than most of its competitors. It feels a little harsh as the crossover SUV drives over poorly maintained city streets. The suspension settles the body immediately after driving over a bump, but in turn, the feeling of driving over said bump gets transferred into your bum. That's not something that you want on a daily commute. Now sitting inside the Chevrolet Equinox, and I have a few issues with this interior. Firstly is the seats. They are nice and soft and very supportive, but the bolsters on the side and on the bottom are just a bit too narrow. It feels like they're digging into my sides and into my thighs. The armrest could use some more padding because it's just way too hard. And a lot of this interior is made out of plastic, which, okay, it's fine. It's a budget-friendly vehicle. And the upper portion is soft plastic, which is actually pretty nice to the touch. The lower portion is hard plastic, which, again, it's fine. I mean, you're usually not going to be touching the harder plastics lower down. But on the door controls, the window control specifically, it's hard plastic and my knee always rests up against it, and it doesn't feel good. But in terms of actual space inside the Equinox, I am 6'4" and legroom is more than plentiful, and same goes with the headroom. This seat is all the way at the bottom though, and yet I still have very good visibility out the front, out the side, and even out the back. In the back of the Equinox, there's a pretty good amount of space here. Behind my driving position, my knees aren't really brushing up against the back, and I have quite a lot of space for my feet. Headroom though is a little tighter. The Equinox has one of the lower roof lines, so hair is brushing up against the headliner. However, because you can option it with a panoramic sunroof, it's pretty airy in here. Even with the door closed and tinted windows, there's still a lot of light in the back. These seats, they are reclined quite a bit, but if you pull on this little tab, you can make them a bit more upright. However, it's very unintuitive to use. The floor is completely flat, so anyone sitting in the middle doesn't have to spread their legs. There are a couple of USB ports as well as a 120 volt power outlet, and your cup holders are right here. And that's about it for the back of the Chevy Equinox. Behind the seats, the Chevrolet Equinox has one of the smallest cargo areas with all seats in their upright position. There's just 847 liters of space, whereas other similarly sized SUVs offer around 1,000 liters of space. But once you fold the second row down, the 2022 Equinox has 1,809 liters of space, which is more than the Ford Escape or Mazda CX-5. At just $26,498 Canadian for the LS front-wheel drive, the starting price of the 2022 Chevrolet Equinox undercuts a lot of its competitors. From there, the prices do go up, but they're still lower than similarly equipped competitors. This 2022 Equinox LT all-wheel drive is equipped to the tune of $36,583 Canadian. It comes well equipped with an 8-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, satellite navigation, automatic climate control, a panoramic sunroof, surround view cameras, power liftgates, parking sensors, adaptive cruise control, heated steering wheel, and cloth upholstery. You'll notice that I didn't say heated seats. There is a heated seat button and you can push it all you want, but nothing's going to happen. Early 2022 models of the Equinox that were supposed to have heated seats don't have them, and that's because of the microchip shortage. Instead, what Chevy's going to do is give you a $50 credit. That's it. But Chevy did say that in the future, once the microchip shortage gets resolved, then any Equinox that was supposed to have heated seats and doesn't have it, the owners can take them to their local dealerships and they will get reinstalled free of charge. So I guess that's something. For safety, the Equinox has basic advanced driver safety systems such as automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, forward collision alert, lane departure warning with lane keep, and auto high beams. There's also a follow distance indicator, but like I said in my Buick Enclave review, does anyone actually use that? There seems to be more and more tailgaters out there anyway. For more driver aids such as blind spot sensors with lane change alert, rear cross traffic alert, and parking sensors, you can get the Driver Confidence Package 2 for less than $500 Canadian. The IIHS gave the Equinox good crash test ratings, except for an updated side impact test in which it only received a marginal score. As well, it received a poor score for seatbelt reminders if the occupants unbuckled themselves. So in the end, The Chevrolet Equinox feels like as though it was made to be a jack of all trades. It has to be good to drive, it has to be efficient, it has to be spacious, it has to have a lot of features, but it can't cost too much. It has to have styling that's not offensive to anyone, and so on and so on. Not an easy thing to do. And that's why it's a master of none, and it just feels average. If you want something good to drive, then you go for the Mazda CX-5. If you want something spacious, you go for the Honda CR-V. If you want something efficient, you go for the Toyota Rav4. And hopefully you understand where I'm getting at with this. This tried to do everything, but it just comes off as being average. And yet, like I said at the start of the video, the Chevy Equinox actually outsells a lot of its competitors in the United States. So why is that? I think it's because of its price. In base form, and even when you spec one up, it still undercuts a lot of its competitors. So if you're a budget-conscious family, this is the one to look at. And if you want to know more about this 2022 Chevrolet Equinox, I wrote a more detailed review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.